Silas had been preoccupied for the previous several months. He had begun to leave the graveyard for days, sometimes weeks, at a time. Over Christmas, Miss Lepescu had come out for 3 weeks in his place, and Bot had shared her meals in her little flat in the old town. She had even taken him to a football match, as Silas had promised that she would. But she had gone back to the place she called the old country after squeezing Bot's cheeks and calling him Nimni, which had become her pet name for him. Now Silas was gone, and Miss Lepescu also. Mr. and Mrs. Owens were sitting in Josiah Worthington's home, talking to Josiah Worthington. None of them was happy.
Josiah Washington said, "You mean to say that he did not tell either of you where he was going, or how the child was to be cared for?" And the Owenses shook their heads. Josiah Washington said, "Well, where is he?" Neither Owens was able to answer. Master Owens said, "He's never been gone for so long before, and he promised when the child came to us, promised he would be here, or someone else would be here to help us care for him. He promised." Mrs. Owens said, "I worry that something must have happened to him." She seemed close to tears, and then her tears turned to anger, and she said, "This is too bad of him. Is there no other way to find him, to call him back?" "None that I know," said Josiah Washington, "but I believe that he left the money in the crib for food for the boy." "Money," said Mrs. Owens. What use is money? But will be needing money if he goes out there to buy food," began Mr. Owens. But Mrs. Owens turned on him. You are all as bad as each other," she said. She left the Washington tomb then, and she went looking for her son, whom she found as she expected to, at the top of the hill, staring out over the town. "Penny for your thoughts," said Mrs. Owens. "You don't have a penny," said Bot. He was 14 now and taller than his mother. "I got two in the coffin," said Mrs. Owens. "Probably a bit green by now, but I still got them right enough. I was thinking about the world," said Bot. "How do we even know that the person who killed my family is still alive? That he's out there?" "Silas said he is," said Mrs. Owens. "But Silas doesn't tell us anything else." Mrs. Owens said, "He means only the best for you. You know that?" "Thanks," said Bot, unimpressed. "So where is he?" Mrs. Owens made no reply. Bot said, "You saw the man who killed my family, didn't you? On that day you adopted me." Mrs. Owens nodded. "What was he like?" "Mostly, I had eyes for you." "Let me see." "He had dark hair, very dark, and I was frightened of him. He had a sharp face, hungry and angry all at once. He was..." Silas saw him walk off. "Why did Silas just kill him?" "Why didn't Silas just kill him?" said Bart fiercely. "He should have just killed him then." Mrs. Owens touched the back of Bart's hand with her cold fingers. She said, "He's not a monster, Bart. If Silas had killed him back then, I would be safe now. I could go anywhere. Silas knows more than you do about all this, more than any of us do. And Silas knows about life and death," said Mrs. Owens. "It's not that easy." Bart said, "What was his name?" "The man who killed them." "He didn't say it, not then." Bart put his head on one side and stared at her, with eyes as grey as thunderclouds. But you know it, don't you?" Mrs. Owens said. "There's nothing you can do, Bart." There is. I can learn. I can learn everything. I need to know all that I can. I learn about ghosts, gold gates. I learn to dream walk. Miss Lepescu taught me how to watch the stars Silas taught me silence. I can horn, I can fade. I know every inch of this graveyard. Mrs. Owen, she reached out her hand, touched her son's shoulder. One day, she said, and then she hesitated. One day, she will not be able to touch him. One day, he will leave them. One day, and then she said, he last told me the man who killed your family was called Jack. Todd said nothing. Then he nodded. Mother, what is it, son? When will Silas come back? The midnight wind was cold and it came from the north. Mrs. Owens was no longer angry. She feared for her son. She said only, I wish I knew, my darling boy. I wish I knew. Scarlett Amber Perkins was 15, and at that moment sitting on the upper deck of the elderly bus. She was a mess of an angry hate. She hated her parents for splitting up. She hated her mom for moving away from Scotland. She hated her father because he didn't seem to care that she had gone. She hated this town for being so different, nothing like Glasgow, where she had grown up. And she hated it because every now and again, she would turn a corner and see something, and the world would all become achingly horribly familiar. She had lost it with her mother that morning. At least in Glasgow, I had friends, Scarlett said, and she wasn't quite shouting, and she wasn't quite sobbing. I'll never see them again. All her mother had said in reply was, at least you're somewhere you have been before. I mean, we lived here when you were little. I don't remember, said Scarlett. And it's not like I still know anyone. Do you want me to find my old friends from when I was 5? Is that what you want? And her mother said, well, I'm not stopping you. Scarlett had gone through the whole of the school day angry, and she was angry now. She hated her school and she hated the world. And right now she particularly hated the town's bus service. Every day when school was over, the 97 bus to the city center would take her from school gates all the way to the end of the streets where her mother had rented a small flat. She had waited at the bus stop on gusty April day for almost half an hour, and no 97 buses had appeared. So when she saw a 121 bus with city center as its destination, she had climbed aboard, but where her bus always turned right, this one turned left into the old town, past the municipal garden in the old town square, past the statue of Josiah Washington, and then crept up in a winding hill lined with high houses. The Scarlet heart sank, and her anger was replaced with misery. She walked downstairs, edged forward, eyes to the sign telling her not to speak to the driver when the vehicle was in motion, and said, excuse me, I want to go to Acacia Avenue. The driver, a large woman, her skin even darker than Scarlett, said, you should have got the 97 then, but this goes to the city center eventually. But even when you get there, you still need to get back. The woman sighed. Best thing you can do, get off here, walk back down the hill. There's a bus stop in front of the town hall. From there you can catch the number 4 or 58. Both of them will take you most of the way to Acacia Avenue. You can get off by the sports center and walk up from there. You got all that? The 4 or the 58? I'll let you off here. It was a request stop on the side of the hill, just past a large pair of open iron gates, and it looked uninviting and dismal. Scarlett stood in the open doorway of the bus until the bus driver said, go on, hop it. She stepped down on the pavement and the bus bleached black smoke and roared away. The wind rattled the trees on the other side of the wall. Scarlett began to walk back down the hill. This was why she needed a mobile phone. She thought if she was so much as 5 minutes late, her mother would but she still wouldn't buy Scarlett a phone of her own. Oh well, she would have to endure another one of her mother's shouting matches. It won't be the first and it won't be the last. By now, she was level with the open gates. She glanced inside and, "That's odd," she said aloud. "That's an expression, deja vu. That means that you feel like you've been somewhere before, that you've somehow already dreamed of it or experienced it in your mind." Scarlett had experienced it. The knowledge that her teacher was just about to tell them that she'd been in Inverness on holiday, or someone had dropped a spoon in that way. Before, this was different. This wasn't a feeling that she had been here before. This was the real thing. Scarlett walked through the open gates into the graveyard. A magpie flew as she walked in. A flash of black and white iridescence green and settled in the branches of a yew tree. Watching her around that corner, she thought, it's a church with a bench in front of it. And she turned a corner to see a church much smaller than the one in her head. A sinister, blocky little gaudy building of grey stone with a jutting spire. In front of it was a weathered wooden bench. She walked over, sat down on the bench, and swung her legs as if she was still a little girl. Hello, said a voice from behind her. "Awful cheeks of me. I know, but would you help me hold down this? I just really need another pair of hands, if it's not too much trouble." Scarlett looked around and saw a man in a fawn-coloured raincoat squatting in front of a gravestone. He was holding a large sheet of paper which was blowing about in the wind. She hurried over to him. You hold on to it here," said the man. "One hand here, one hand there. That's it. Rightful in position. I know, ridiculously grateful." He had a biscuit tin next to him, and from the tin he pulled out what looked like a crayon size of a small candle. He began rubbing it back and forth across the stone with easy, practiced movements. There we go," he said cheerfully, "and here she comes. Oops, a wiggly bit down at the bottom here. I think it's meant to be ivy." The Victorians love putting ivy on things, deeply symbolic, you know. "And there we are. You can let me go now." He stood out, ran one hand through his grey hair. "Oh, needed to stand. Legs got a bit pins and needlies," he said. "So what do you reckon to that?" The actual headstone was covered in green and yellow lichen, and was so worn and faded as to almost be undescribable, but the rubbing was clear. Marjala Godspeed, minister of this parish, 1791 to 1870, lost to all but memory. Scarlett beat aloud. "And probably now lost even to that," said the man. His hair was thinning, and he smiled hesitantly and blinked at her through small round glasses which made him look like a friendly owl. Large raindrops splashed down on the paper, and the man hurriedly rolled it up and grabbed his tin box of crayons. Another handful of raindrops, and Scarlett picked up the portfolio of the man, pointed to, propped up beside a nearby gravestone, and followed him into the tiny porch of the chapel, where the rain could not touch them. "Thank you so much," said the man. "I don't think it's really going to rain much. Weather forecast for this afternoon said mostly sunny." As if in a reply, the wind gusted coldly, and the rain began to beat down in earnest. I know what you're thinking, the gravestone robbing man said to Scarlett. You do? She said. She had been thinking, my mom will kill me. You're thinking, is this a church or chapel? And the answer is, as far as I can ascertain, that on the site there was indeed a small church, and the original graveyard would have been its churchyard. That's as long ago as 8, perhaps 900 AD, rebuilt and extended several times in there. But there was a fire here in the 1820s, and by that time it was already much too small for the area. People around here were using stands in the village square as their parish church. So when they came to rebuild here, they made it a funeral chapel, keeping many of the original features. The stained glass windows in the far walls are said to be original. Actually, said Scarlett, I was thinking that my mom is gonna kill me. I got the wrong bus and I'm already so late home. Good Lord, you poor thing, said the man. Look, I only live just down the road. You wait here. And with that, he thrust his portfolio, his tin of crayons, and his rolled up sheet of paper into her hands, and he started off at a trot down to the gates, his shoulders hunched against the driving rein. A couple of minutes later, Scarlett saw the lights of a car and heard the sound of the car horn. Scarlett ran down to the gates where she could see the car, an elderly green Mini. The man she had been talking to was sitting in the driver's seat. He went down his window. Come on, he said. Where exactly am I taking you? Scarlett stood there, the rain running down her neck. I don't take this from strangers, she said. Quite right too, said the man. But good one turn deserve. And all that? Here, put the stuff in the bag before it gets soaked. He opened the passenger door and Scarlett leaned inside to put the grave rubbing equipment down on the back seat as best as she could. Tell you what, he said. Why don't you phone your mother? You can use my phone and tell her my car's number plate. You can do it from inside the car. You're getting soaked out there. Scarlett hesitated. The rain was beginning to plaster her hair down. It was cold. The man reached over and handed her his mobile phone. Scarlett looked at it. She realized she was more afraid of calling her mother than she was getting into the car. Then she said, I could call the police too, couldn't I? You certainly can, yes. Or you can walk home. Or you can just call your mother and ask her to come and pick you up. Scarlett got into the passenger seat and closed the door. The door she kept hold of the man's phone. She kept hold of the man's phone. Where do you live? The man asked. You really don't have to. I mean, you could just take me to the bus stop. I'll take you home. Address? 128 Acacia Avenue. It's off the main road, a wee bit past the big sports center. You're out of your way, aren't you? Right, let's get you home. He took off the handbrakes, swung the car around, and drove down the hill. Been living here long? He said. Not really. We moved in after Christmas. We lived here when I was 5 though. It was that abrupt I detect in your accent. We have been living in Scotland for 10 years. Then I sounded like everyone else. And then I came down here and now I stick out like a sore thumb. She had wanted it to sound like a joke, but it wasn't true. And she could hear it as she said it. Not funny, just bitter. The man drove to Acacia Avenue, parked in front of the house and then insisted on coming up to the front door with her when the door was open. He said, frightfully sorry I took the liberty of bringing your daughter back to you. Obviously you taught her well. Shouldn't accept leave from strangers, but well, it was raining. She took the wrong bus, went up on the other side of the road, of the town. Bit of mess all around. Really, you say you can't find it in your heart to forgive her and me. Scarlett expected her mother to shout above them and was surprised and relieved when her mother only said, "Well, you couldn't be too careful these days." And was Mr. a teacher? And would he like a cup of tea? Mr. Said his name was Frost, but he couldn't call him Jay. She should call him Jay. And Mrs. Perkins smiled and said he could call her Luna. And she put the kettle on over tea. Scarlett told her mother the story of her long past adventure and how she had found herself at the graveyard and how she met Mr. Frost by a little church. Mr. Perkins dropped her teacup. They were sitting around a table in the kitchen, so the cup didn't fall very far, and it didn't break, just spilled.
Mrs. Perkins apologized awkwardly and went and got a cloth from the sink to mop it up. Then she said, "The graveyard on the hill in the old town, that one? I live over that way," said Mr. Frost. "Been doing a lot of grave robbings, and you know it's technically a natural reserve." Mrs. Perkins said, "I know," thin-lipped. Then she said, "Thank you so much for giving Scarlett a ride home, Mr. Frost." Every word might have been an ice cube. "Then, I think you should leave now," I said. "That's a bit much," said Frost amiably. "Didn't mean to hurt your feelings. Was it something I said? The rubbings? They're for a local history project. It's not as if I'm, digging up bones or anything." For a heartbeat, Scarlett thought that her mother was going to strike Mr. Frost, who just looked worried. But Mrs. Perkins shook her head and said, "Sorry, family history, not your fault." As if she were making a conscious effort, she said brightly, "You know, Scarlett actually used to play in that graveyard when she was little. This is 10 years ago. She had an imaginary friend too, a little boy called Nobody." A smile twitched at the corner of Mr. Frost's lip. "A ghostie? No, I don't think so." He said, He just lived there." She even pointed out the tomb he lived in. "So I suppose he was a ghost. Do you remember love?" Scarlett shook her head. "I must have been a funny kid," she said. "I'm sure that you were nothing of the said Mr. Frost. "You are raising a fine girl here, Nona. Well, lovely cup of tea. Always a joy to make new friends. I'll be toddling off now. Got to make myself a little dinner. Then I've got a meeting of local history society." "You are making your own dinner," said Mrs. Perkins. "Yes, making it. Well, defrosting it really. I'm also a master of the boy in the back. Eating for one, living on my own. Bit of a crusty old bachelor. Actually, in the papers, that always means gay, doesn't it? Not gay. Just never meet the right one." And for a moment, he looked rather sad. Mrs. Perkins, who hated to cook, announced that she always cooked too much food at the weekend. And as she ushered Mr. Frost out into the hall, Scarlett heard him agree that he would love to come round for dinner on Saturday night. When Mrs. Perkins came back from the front hall, all she said to Scarlett was, "I hope you've done your homework." Scarlett was thinking about the afternoon events as she lay in the bed that night, listening to the sound of the cars grinding their way along the main road. She had been there. in the graveyard when she was little. That was why everything had seemed so familiar. In her mind, she imagined and she remembered, and somewhere in there she fell asleep. But in sleep, she still walked the way, she still walked the path of the graveyard. It was night, but she could see everything as clearly as if were day. If it were day. She was on the side of a hill. There was a boy of about her own age, standing with his back to her, looking at the lights of the city. "Scarlet," said boy. "Boy, what are you doing?" He looked around, seemed to have trouble focusing. "Who said that?" And then, "Oh, I can see you, sort of. Are you dreamwalking?" I think I'm dreaming, she agreed. "Not quite what I meant," said the boy. "Hello, I'm bored." "I'm Scarlet," she said. He looked at her again as if he was seeing her for the first time. "Of course, you are. I know you look familiar. You were in the graveyard today with that man, the one in the paper. Mr. Frost," she said. "He's really nice. He gave me a lift home." Then she said, "Did you see us?" "Yeah. I kept an eye on most things that happened in the graveyard." What kind of a name is Bob?" she said. What kind of a name is Bob?" she asked. It's short for nobody. It's short for nobody. Of course, Scarlet. Of course, said Scarlet. "That's what this dream is about. You're my imaginary friend from when I was little, all grown up." He nodded. He was taller than she was. He wore grey, although she could not have described his clothes. His hair was too long, and she thought it had been some time since he had received a haircut. He said, "You were really brave. We went deep into the hill, and we saw the indigo man, and we met the slayer." Something happened then in her head. A rushing and a tumbling, a wall of darkness, and a crash of images. I remember, said Scarlet. But she said it to the empty darkness of her bedroom, and heard nothing in reply but the low thunder of a distant lorry, making its way through the night. Bob had stores of food, the kind that lasted, catches in the crypt, and more in some of the chillier tombs and vaults and mausoleums. Silas had made sure of that. He had enough food to keep him going for a couple of months, unless Silas or Miss Lupescu was there. He simply could not leave the graveyard. He missed the world beyond the graveyard gates. But he knew it was not safe out there. Not yet. The graveyard, though, was his world and his domain, and he was proud of it. Loved it as only a 14-year-old boy can love anything. And yet, in the graveyard, no one ever changed. The little children Bob had played with when he was small were still little children. Fortinbras, Bartleby, who had once been his best friend, was now 4 or 5 years younger than Bob was, and they were less to talk about each time they saw each other. Thackeray Porringer was Bot's height and age, and seemed to be in much better temper with him. He would walk with Bot in the evenings and tell stories of unfortunate things that happened to his friends. Normally the stories would end in the friend being hanged until they were dead for no offense of their and by mistakes. Although sometimes they were simply transported to the American colonies, and they didn't have to be hanged unless they came back. Lisa Hipstock, who had been Bot's friend for the last 6 years, was different in another way. She was less likely to be there for him when Bot went down to the nettle patch to see her. And on the rare occasions when she would be short-tempered, argumentative, and often downright rude. Bot talked to Mr. Owens about this, and after a few moments' reflection, his father said, "It's just woman. I reckon she liked you as a boy, probably isn't sure who you are now. You're a young man. I used to play with one little girl down by the duck pond every day until she turned about your age, and then she threw an apple at my head and did not say another word to me until I was 17. Mrs. Owens sniffed. "It was a pill I threw," she said tartly, "and I was talking to you again soon enough, for we danced a measure at your cousin Ned's wedding, and that was but 2 days after your 16th birthday." Mr. Owens said, "Of course you are right, my dear." He winked at Bot to tell him that it was none of it serious, and then he mouthed 17 to show that really it was. Bot had allowed himself no friends among the living. That way, he had realized back during his short-lived school days, lay on trouble. Still, he had remembered Scarlett, had missed her for years after she went away, had long ago faced the fact he would never see her again, and now she had been here in the graveyard, and he had not known her. He was wandering deeper into the tangle of ivy and trees that made the graveyard's northwest quadrant so dangerous. Signs advised visitors to keep out, but the signs were not needed. It was uninviting and creepy once you were past the ivy tangle that marked the end of the Egyptian walk, and the black doors in the mock Egyptian walls that led to people's finest resting places. In the northwest, nature had been reclaiming the graveyard for almost 100 years, and the stones were tipped over. Graves were forgotten or simply lost beneath the green ivy and the leaf fall of 50 years. Paths were lost and impassable. Bob walked with care. He knew the area well, and he knew how dangerous it could be. When Bob was 9, He had been exploring it just this part of the world when the soil had given way beneath him, tumbling him into a hole almost 20 feet down. The grave had been dug deep to accommodate many coffins, but there was no headstone, and only one coffin down at the bottom, containing a rather excitable medical gentleman named Carstairs, who seemed thrilled by Bob's arrival and insisted on examining Bob's wrist, which Bob had twisted in the tumble, grabbing onto a root. Before he could be persuaded to go and fetch help, Bob was making his way through the northwest quadrant, a sludge of fallen leaves, a tangle of ivy, where the fossils made their homes, and fallen angels stepped up blindly because he had an urge to talk to the poet. Nehemiah Trott was the poet's name, and his gravestone beneath the greenery read, "Here lie the mortal remains of Nehemiah Trott, 1741 to 1774. Swans sing before they die." Bob said, "Master Trott, might I ask you for advice?" Nehemiah Trott beamed warmly. "Of course, brave boy. The advice of poets is the cordiality of kings. How many I smell unshun on your no, not unshun. How may I give balm to your pain?" "I'm not actually in pain. There's a girl I used to know, and I wasn't sure if I should find her and talk to her or if I should just forget about it." Nehemiah Trott drew himself up to his full height, which was less than Bob's, raised both hands to his chest excitedly, and said, "Oh, you must go to her and implore her. You must call her your terpsichore, your echo, your Clytemnestra. You must write poems for her. Mighty odds, I shall help you write them. And thus, and only thus, shall you win your true love's heart." "I don't actually need to win her heart. She's not my true love," said Bob. "Just someone I like to talk to." "Of all the organs," said Nehemiah Trott, "the tongue is the most remarkable, for we use it both to taste our sweet wine and bitter poisons. Thus also do we utter words both sweet and sour with the same tongue. Go to her, talk to her." "I shouldn't." "You should, sir. You must. I shall write about it when the battle's lost and won. But if I am fated for one person, it makes it easier for other people to see me." Nehemiah Trott said, "Listen to me, young leader, young hero, young Alexander. If you dare nothing, then when the day is over, nothing is all you will have gained. Nothing is all you will have gained." "Good point." Bob was pleased with himself and glad he had thought of asking the poet for advice. Really, he thought, if you couldn't trust a poet to offer sensible advice, who could you trust? which reminded him. "Mr. Trot," said Bot, "tell me about revenge." Dish best served cold," said Nehemiah Trot. "Do not take revenge in the heat of the moment. Instead, wait until the hour is propitious." There was a Grub Street hack named O'Leary, an Irishman I should add, who had the nerve to confronted Chick to write of my first slim volume of poems, a nosegay of beauty assembled for gentlemen of quality, that it was inferior doggerel of no worth whatsoever, and that the paper it was written on would have been better used as. No, I cannot say. Let us simply agree that it was a most vulgar statement. "But you got your revenge on him?" asked Bot curiously. "Oh, him and his entire pestilent breed. Oh, I had my revenge, Master Owens. And it was a terrible one. I wrote and had published a letter which I nailed to the door of the public houses in London, where such low, screaming folk were wont to frequent, and I explained that given the fragility of the genius poetical, I would henceforth write not for them, but only for myself and posterity, and that I should, as long as I lived, publish no more poems for them. Thus I left instructions that upon my death my poems were to be buried with me, unpublished, and that only when posterity realized my genius, realized that hundreds of my verses had been lost, only then my coffin to be disinterred, only then could my poems be removed from my cold dead hand, to finally be published to the approbation and delight of all. It is a terrible thing to be ahead of your time. And after you died, that dug you up, and they printed the poems. No, not yet, no. But there is still plenty of time. Posterity is best. So that was your revenge? Indeed, and a mightily powerful and cunning one at that. Yes, said Bot, I'm convinced. Best served cold, said Nehemiah Trot proudly. Bot left the northwest of the graveyard, returned through the Egyptians' walk to the more orderly paths and untangled ways, and as dusk fell, he wandered back towards the old chapel, not because he hoped Silas had returned from his travel, but because he had spent his life visiting the chapel at dusk. And it felt good to have a rhythm, and anyways, he was hungry. Bot slipped through the crypt door, down into the crypt. He moved a cupboard box filled with cut and damp parish papers, and took out a carton of orange juice, an apple, a box of bread sticks, and a block of cheese, and he ate, while pondering how and whether he would seek out Scarlet. He would dream walk. Perhaps, since that was how she had come to him. He headed outside, was on his way to sit on the grey wooden bench, when he saw something, and he hesitated. There was someone already there, sitting on his bench. She was reading a magazine. Bob faded even more, became a part of the graveyard, no more important than a shadow or a twig. But she looked up, she looked straight at him, and she said, "Bob, is that you?" He said nothing. Then he said, "Why can you see me? I, I almost couldn't at first. I thought you were in shadow or something, but you looked like you did in my dream. You sort of came into my focus." He walked over to the bench. He said, "Can you actually read that? Isn't it too dark for you?" Scarlett closed the magazine. She said, "It's odd. You'd think it would be too dark, but I could read it fine, no problem." "Are you?" He shrugged off, uncertain of what he had wanted to ask her. "Are you here on your own?" She nodded. "I helped Mr. Frost do some grave robbings after school, and then I told him I wanted to sit and think here for a bit. When I'm finished here, I promised to go and have a cup of tea with him, and he'll run me home. He didn't even ask why. Just said he loves sitting in the graveyard too, and that he thinks they can be the most peaceful places in the world." Then she said, "Can I hug you?" "Do you want to?" said Bob. "Yes." "Well then," he thought for a moment, "I don't mind if you do. My hands won't go through you or anything. You're really there. You're really there. You won't go through me," he told her. And she threw her arms around him and squeezed him so tight he could hardly breathe. He said, "That hurts." "Scarlett, let go. Sorry." "No, it was nice. I mean, you just squeezed more than I was expecting. I just wanted to know if you were real. All these years, I thought you were just something in my head. And then I sort of forget about you. But I didn't make you up. And you're really back. And you're back. You're in my head. And you're in the world too." Bob smiled. He said, "You used to wear a sort of a coat. It was orange. And whenever I saw the particular color orange, I would, I'd think of you. I don't suppose you, I don't suppose you still have the coat." "No," she said, "not for a long time. It would be a wee bit too small for me now." "Yes," said Bob, "of course." "I should go home," said Scarlett. "I thought I could come up at the weekend, though." And then seeing the expression on the Bob's face, she said, "Today's Wednesday. I like that."
She turned to go. Then she said, "How will I find you next time?" Bot said, "I'll find you. Don't worry. Just be on your own and I'll find you." She nodded and was gone. Bot walked back into the graveyard and up the hill until he reached the Frobisher mausoleum. He did not enter it. He climbed up the side of the building, using the thick ivy root as a foothold, and he pulled himself up onto the stone roof, where he sat and thought, looking out at the world of moving things beyond the graveyard. And he remembered the way that Scarlett had held him, and how safe he had felt, if only for a moment, and how fine it would be to walk safely in the lands beyond the graveyard, and how good it was to be master of his own small world. Scarlett said that she didn't want a cup of tea, thank you, or a chocolate biscuit. Mr. Frost was concerned. "Honestly," he told her, "you look like you've seen a ghost." "Well, a graveyard, not a bad place to see one. If you were going to, I had an aunt once who claimed her parrot was haunted. She was a scarlet macaw." The parrot. The aunt was an architect. Never knew the details. "I'm fine," said Scarlett. "It was just a long day." "I'll give you a lift home then." Any idea what this says? Been puzzling over it for half an hour. He indicated a grave rubbing on the little table, held flat by a jam jar in each corner. Is that name Gladstone, do you think? Could be a relative of the Prime Minister, but I can't make out anything else. Afraid not, said Scarlett, but I'll take another look when I come out on Saturday. Is your mother likely to put in an appearance? She said she'd drop me off here in the morning. Then she has to go and do the shopping for our dinner. She's cooking roast chicken. Do you think, asked Mr. Frost, hopefully, there are likely to be roast potatoes? I expect so, yes. Mr. Frost looked delighted. Then he said, I wouldn't want her to go out of her way, I mean. She's loving it, said Scarlett, truthfully. Thank you for giving me a lift home. More than welcome, said Mr. Frost. They walked together down the steps in Mr. Frost's high narrow house to the little entrance hall at the bottom of the stairs. In Krakow, on a Wavell Hill, there are caves called the Dragon's Den, named after a long-dead dragon. These are the caves that the tourists know about. There are caves beneath those caves that the tourists do not know and do not ever get to visit. They go down a long way, and they are inhabited. Silas went first, followed by the grey hugeness of Miss Lepescu, padding quietly on 4 feet just behind him. Behind them was Kanda, a bandage-wrapped Assyrian mummy with powerful eagle wings and eyes like rubies, who was carrying a small pig. There had originally been 4 of them, but they had lost Haron in a cave far above, when the Ifrit, as naturally overconfident as all of its race, had stepped into a space bound by 3 polished bronze mirrors and had been swallowed up in a blaze of light. In moments, the Ifrit could only be seen in the mirrors, and no longer in reality. In the mirrors, his fiery eyes were wide open, and his mouth was moving as if he were shouting at them to leave and beware. And then he faded and was lost to them. Silas, who had no problems with mirrors, covered one of them with his coat, rendering the trap useless. So, said Silas, now there are only 3 of us. And a pig, said Kanda. Why? Asked Miss Lepescu with a wolf tongue through wolf teeth. Why the pig? It's lucky, said Kanda. Miss Lepescu growled, unconvinced. Did Haron have a pig? Asked Kanda simply. Hush, said Silas. They are coming. From the sound of it, there are many of them. Let them come, whispered Kanda. Miss Lepescu's hackles were rising. She said nothing, but she was ready for them, and it was only by an effort of will that she did not throw back her head and howl. It's beautiful this way up, said Scarlett. Yes, said Bart. So, your family were all killed, said Scarlett. Does anyone know who did it? No, not that I know. My guardian only says that the man who did it is still alive, and that he'll tell me the rest of what he knows one day. One day? When I'm ready. What's he scared of? That you'd strap on your gun and ride out to wreak vengeance on the man who killed your family? Bart looked at her seriously. Well, obviously, he said. Not a gun, though, but yes, something like that. You're joking. Bart said nothing. His lips were tight pressed together. He shook his head. Then he said, I'm not joking. It was a bright and sunny Saturday morning. They were just past the entrance to the Egyptian Walk, out of the direct sunlight, under the pines and the sprawling monkey puzzle tree. Your guardian, is he a dead person too? Bart said, I don't talk about him. Scarlett looked hurt. Not even to me. Not even to you. Well, she said, be like that. Bart said, Look, I'm sorry. I didn't mean. Just as Scarlet said, I promised Mr. Frost I wouldn't be too long. I better be getting back. Right, said Bart, worried he had offended her, unsure what he should say to make things better. He watched Scarlet head off in the winding path back to the chapel. A familiar female voice said, with derision, "Look at her, Miss High and Mighty." But there was no one to be seen. Bart, feeling awkward, walked back to the Egyptian walk. Miss Lilibet and Miss Violet had let him store a cardboard box filled with old paperback books in their vault, and he wanted to find something to read. Scarlet helped Mr. Frost with his grave robbings until midday, when they stopped for lunch. He offered to buy her fish and chips as a thank you, and they walked down to the chip shop at the bottom of the road. As they walked back up the hill, they ate their steaming fish and chips, drenched in vinegar and glittering with salt, out of paper bags. Scarlet said, If you wanted to find about a murder, where would you look? I already tried the internet." Depends. What kind of murder are we talking about?" "Something local, I think. About 13 or 14 years ago, a family was killed around here." "Crikey," said Mr. Frost. "This really happened?" "Oh yes. Are you alright?" "Not really. A bit of a wimp, really. Things like that, I mean, local true crime. You don't like to think about it. Things like that happening here. Not something I'd expect a girl of your age to be interested in." "It's not actually for me," admitted Scarlet. "It's for a friend." Mr. Frost finished off the last of his fright card. "A library, I suppose. If it's not on the internet, it'll be in the newspaper files. What set you off after this?" "Oh," Scarlet wanted to lie as little as possible. She said, "A boy I know. He was asking about it." "Definitely the library," said Mr. Frost. "Murder. Brr. Gives me the shivers." "Me too," said Scarlet. "A bit. Then, hopefully. Could you maybe possibly drop me off at the library this afternoon?" Mr. Frost bit a large chip in half, chewed it, and looked at the rest of the chip, disappointed. They get cold so fast, don't they, chips? One minute you're burning your mouth on them, the next you're wondering how they cool off so quickly. "I'm sorry," said Scarlet. "I shouldn't be asking for lifts everywhere." "Not at all," said Mr. Frost. "Just wondering how to best organize this afternoon, and whether or not your mother really likes chocolates." "Bottle of wine or chocolates? Not really sure. Both, maybe." I can make my own way home from the library," said Scarlet. "And she loves chocolates. So do I." "Chocolates it is then," said Mr. Frost, relieved. They had reached the middle of the row of high, terraced houses on the hill, and the little green mini parked outside. "Get in. I'll run you over to the library." The library was a square building, all brick and stone, dating back to the beginning of the last century. Scarlet looked around and then went up to the desk. The woman said, "Yes?" Scarlet said, "I wanted to see some old newspaper clippings." "Is it for school?" said the woman. "It's local history," said Scarlet, nodding, proud that she hadn't actually lied. "We've got the local paper on microfiche," said the woman. She was large and had silver hoops in her ears. Scarlet could feel her heart pounding in her chest. She was certain she looked guilty or suspicious, but the woman led her into a room with boxes that looked like computer screens, and showed her how to use them to project a page of the newspaper at a time onto the screen. "One day we'll have it all digitized," said the woman. "Now, what dates are you after?" "About 13 or 14 years ago," said Scarlet. "I can't be more specific than that. I'll know it when I see you." The woman gave Scarlet a small box with 5 years' worth of newspapers on microfilm in it. Go out, she said. Scarlett assumed that the murder of her family would have been front page news, but instead, when she eventually found it, it was almost buried on page 5. It had happened in October, 13 years earlier. There was no color in the article, no description, just an understated list of events. Architect Ronald Dorian, 36, his wife Carlota, 34, a publisher, and their daughter Misty, 7, were found dead at 33 Dunstan Road. Foul play is suspected. A police spokesman said it was too early to comment at this stage in their investigations, but that significant leads are being followed. There was no mention of how the family died, and nothing said about a missing baby. In the weeks that followed, there was no follow-up, and the police did not ever comment, not that Scarlett could see. But that was it. She was certain. 33 Dunstan Road. She knew the house. She had been in there. She returned the box of microfilm to the front desk, thanked the librarian, and walked home in the April sunshine. Her mother was in the kitchen cooking, not entirely successfully, judging from the smell of burnt bottom of the saucepan that filled most of the flat. Scarlett retreated to her bedroom and opened the windows wide to let the burnt smell out. Then she sat on her bed and made a phone call. Hello, Mr. Frost? Scarlett. Everything still alright for this evening? How's your mother? Oh, it's all under control, said Scarlett, which was what her mother had said when she asked, Mr. Frost, how long have you lived your life? How long have you lived at your house? How long? About, 4 months now. How did you find it? Estate agent's window. It was empty and I could afford it. Well, more or less. Well, I wanted something within walking distance of the graveyard, and this was perfect. Mr. Frost, Scarlett wondered how to say it and just said it. About 13 years ago, 3 people were murdered in your house, the Dorian family. There was a silence on the other end of the phone. Mr. Frost, are you there? Still here, Scarlett. Sorry. Not the sort of thing you expect to hear. It's an old house, I mean. You expect things to happen a long time ago. But not, what happened? Scarlett wondered how much she could tell him. She said, there was a little piece on it in a newspaper. It only gave the address and nothing else. I don't know how they died or anything. Well, good Lord. Mr. Frost sounded more intrigued by the news than Scarlett could have expected. This, young Scarlett, is where we local historians come into our own. Leave it with me. I'll find out everything I can and report back. Thank you, said Scarlett, relieved. I assume this phone call is because if Nuna thought there were murders going on in my home, even 13-year-old ones, you'll never be allowed to see me or the graveyard again. So, suppose I won't mention it unless you do. Thank you, Mr. Frost. See you at 7, with chocolates. Dinner was remarkably pleasant. The burnt smell had gone from the kitchen. The chicken was good. The salad was better. The roast potatoes were too crispy, but a delighted Mr. Frost had proclaimed that this was precisely the way that he liked them, and had taken a second helping. The flowers were popular. The chocolates, which they had for the dessert, were perfect, and Mr. Frost sat and talked, then watched television with them until about 10 p.m., when he said that he needed to get home. Time, tide, and historical research wait for no man, he said. He shook Nuna's hand with enthusiasm, winked at Scarlett conspiratorially, and was out of the door. Scarlet tried to find Bot in her dreams at night. She thought of him as she went to sleep, imagined herself walking the graveyard looking for him. But when she did dream, it was of wandering around Glasgow city centre with her friends from her old school. They were hunting for a specific street, but all they found, one after another, was a succession of dead ends. Deep beneath the hill in Krakow, the deepest vault beneath the caves they called the Dragon's Den, Miss Lupescu stumbled and fell. Silas crouched behind her and cradled Miss Lupescu's head in his hands. There was blood on her face, and some of it was hers. "You must leave me," she said. "Save the boy." She was halfway now, halfway between Grey Wolf and woman, but her face was a woman's face. "No," said Silas, "I won't leave you." Behind him, Kanda cradled its piglet like a child might hold a doll. The mummy's left wing was shattered, and it would never fly again, but its bearded face was implacable. "They will come back, Silas," Mr. Lupescu whispered. "Too soon, the sun will rise." "Then," said Silas, "we must deal with them before they are ready to attack. Can you stand?" "Da. I am one of the hounds of God," said Mr. Lupescu. "I will stand." She lowered her face into the shadows, flexed her fingers. When she raised her head again, it was a wolf's head. She put her front paws down on a rock and laboriously pushed herself up into a standing position. A grey wolf bigger than a bear, her coat and muzzle flecked with blood. She threw back her head and howled a howl of fury and of challenge. Her lips curled back from her teeth, and she lowered her head once more. "Now," growled Miss Lupescu, "we end this." Late on Sunday afternoon, the telephone rang. Scarlet was sitting downstairs, copying faces from the manga she had been reading onto scrap paper. Her mother picked up the phone. "Funny, we were just talking about you," said her mother, although they hadn't been. "It was wonderful," her mother continued. "I had the best time. Honestly, it was no trouble. The chocolates, they were perfect. Just perfect. I told Scarlet to tell you, anytime you want a good dinner, you just let me know. And then, Scarlet, yes, she's here. I'll put her on. Scarlet." "I'm just here, Mom," said Scarlet. "You don't have to shout." She took the phone. "Mr. Frost?" "Scarlet?" He sounded excited. The thing we were talking about. The thing that happened in our house. You can tell this friend of yours, I found out, listen. When you said a friend of yours, did you mean it in the sense of we're actually talking about you, or is there a real person? If it's not a personal question, I've got a real friend who wants to know," said Scarlet, amused.
"I got a real friend who wants to know," said Scarlet, amused. Her mother shot her a puzzled look. "Tell your friend that I did some digging, not literally, more like rummaging. Well, a fair amount of actual looking around, and I think I might have unearthed some real information. Stumbled upon something hidden. Well, not something I think we should spare out. I found things out." "Like what?" said Scarlet. "Look, I don't think I meant, but as far as I can tell, 3 people were killed. One of them, the baby, I think it wasn't a family of 3, it was a family of 4. Only 3 of them died. Tell him to come and see me, your friend. I'll fill him in." "I'll tell him," said Scarlet. She put down the phone, her heart beating like a snare. Bob walked down the narrow stone stairs for the first time in 6 years. His footsteps echoed in the chamber inside the hill. He reached the bottom of the steps and waited for the slayer to manifest. He waited and waited, but nothing appeared. Nothing whispered, nothing moved. He looked around the chamber untouched, troubled by the deep darkness, seeing it as a dead sea. He walked over to the altar stone set in the floor. with a cup and a roach and the stone knife set. He reached down and touched the edge of the knife. It was sharper than he had expected. It nicked the skin off his finger. "It is the treasure of the slayer," whispered in a triple voice, but it sounded smaller than he remembered, more hesitant. Bart said, "You're the oldest thing here. I came to talk to you. I want advice." A pause. Nothing comes to the slayer for advice. The slayer guards. The slayer waits. "I know, but Silas isn't here. I don't know who else to talk to." Nothing was said, just a silence in reply that echoed of dust and loneliness. "I do not know what to do," said Bart. "Honestly, I think I can find out about who killed my family. Who wanted to kill me. It means leaving the graveyard though." The slayer said nothing. Smoke tendrils twined slowly from the inside of the chamber. "I'm not afraid of dying," said Bart. "It's just so many people I cared for have spent so much time keeping me safe, teaching me and protecting me." Again, silence. Then he said, "I have to do this on my own." "Yes, that's all then. Sorry I bothered you." It whispered into Bart's head. Then, in a voice that was a slit in unison glide, "The slayer was set to guard the treasure until our master returned. Are you our master?" "No," said Bart. And then, with a hopeful whine, "Will you be our master?" "I'm afraid not. If you were our master, we could hold you in our quarters forever. If you were our master, we will keep you safe and protect you until the end of time and never let you endure the dangers of the world." "I'm not your master." "No." Bart feared that the slayer reaching through his mind. It said, "Then find your name." And in his mind was empty, and the room was empty, and Bart was alone. Bart walked up the stairs carefully yet quickly. He had come to the decision and needed to act fast, while the decision was still burning in his mind. Scarlett was waiting for him on the bench by the chapel. "Well," she said. "I'll do it. Come on," he said. And side by side they walked down the path down to the graveyard gates. Number 33 was a tall house, spindly thin, in the middle of a terrace row. It was red brick, unmemorable. Bob looked at it uncertainly, wondering why it did not seem familiar or special. It was only a house, like any other. There was a small concrete space in front of it. There wasn't a garden. It was a mini park on the street. The front door had once been painted bright blue, but has dimmed by time and the sun. "Well," said Scarlett. Bob knocked on the door. There was nothing. Then a clatter of feet on the stairs from the inside, and the door opened to reveal an entrance hall or stairs. Framed in the doorway was a bespectacled with receding grey hair, who blinked at them and stuck his hand out at Bart, and smiling nervously, and said, "You must be Miss Perkins' mysterious friend. Good to meet you. This is Bart," said Scarlett. "Bart?" "Bart, with a D," he said. "This is Bart, and this is Mr. Frost." Bart and Frost shook hands. "Kettle is on," said Mr. Frost. "What do you say we sought information over a cuppa?" They followed him up the steps of the kitchen, where he poured 3 mugs of tea, then led them into a small sitting room. The house just keeps getting up," he said. "The toilet is on the next floor, my office, then bathrooms above that. Gives you fit all those steps." They sat on a large, extremely purple sofa. "It was already here when I came," and they sipped their tea. Scarlett had worried that Mr. Frost would ask Bob lots of questions, but he didn't. He just seemed excited as he had identified the lost gravestones of someone famous and desperately wanted to tell the world. He kept moving impatiently in his chair as if he had something enormous apart to them. Not immediately blurting it out was a physical strain. Scarlett said, "So what did you find out?" Mr. Frost said, "Well, you were right. I mean, this was the house where the people were killed. And I think the crime was, well, not exactly hushed up, but forgotten about. Let's go, by the authorities." "I don't understand," said Scarlett. "Murderers don't get swept under the carpet." "This one was," said Frost. He drained his tea. "There are people out there who have influence. It isn't only the explanation for that, and for what happened to the youngest child. And what was that? He lived, said Frost. I'm sure of that. But there wasn't a manhunt. A missing toddler would normally be international news, but they must have squashed it somehow. Who were they? Sid asked Bart. The same people who had the family killed? Yes. Do you know any more than that? Yes. A little. Frost showed off. I'm sorry. Look, given what I found, this is all too incredible. Scarlett was starting to feel frustrated. What was? What did you find? Frost looked shamefaced. You're right. I'm sorry. Getting into keeping secrets, not a good idea. Historians don't bury things. We dig them up. Show people. Yes. He stopped, hesitant. Then he said, I found a letter. Upstairs. It was hidden under the loose floorboard. He turned to Bart. Young man. Will I be correct to assume your personal interest in this business? This dreadful business. Is personal? Bart nodded. I won't ask any more, said Mr. Frost as he stood up. Come on, he said to Bart. Not you though, to Scarlett. Not yet. I'll show him. And if he says it's alright, I'll show you as well. Deal? Deal, said Scarlett. We won't be long, said Mr. Frost. Come on, lad. Bart stood up, darted a concerned look at Scarlett. It's okay, she said, smiling at him, reassuring as she could wait. I'll wait for you. She watched their shadow as they walked out of the room and up the stairs. She felt nervous but expectant. She wondered what Bart would learn and was happy that he would learn it first. His story, after all. It was his right. Out on the stairs, Mr. Frost led the way. Bart looked around as he walked up towards the top of the house. Nothing seemed familiar. It all seemed strange. All the way to the very top, said Mr. Frost, as they went up another flight of stairs. He said, you don't have to answer if you do not want to. But, you are the boy, aren't you? Bart said nothing. Here we are, said Mr. Frost. He turned the key in the door and at the top of the house, pushing it open, and they went inside. The room was small, an attic room, with a sloppy ceiling, 13 years from before. It held a coat, a belly, held a man, and the boy. Strokes of luck, really, said Mr. Frost, under my own nose, so to speak. He crouched down and pulled back the threadbare carpet. So you know why my family was murdered? Asked Bart. Mr. Frost said, it was all in here. He reached down to a short length of a floorboard and pushed it at it until he was able to level it out. This would have been the baby's room, said Mr. Frost. But I'll show you the only thing that we do not know is who did it. Nothing at all. We don't have the tiniest clue. We know he has dark hair, said Bart in the room that has once been his bedroom. We all know his name is Jack. Mr. Frost put his hands down into the empty space where the floorboard has been. He has been almost 13 years, he said. And hair gets thin, it goes grey in 13 years. But yes, that's right, it's Jack. He straightened up and the hand that has been in the hole in the floor was holding a large sharp knife. Now, said the man Jack. Now boy, it's time to finish this. Bart stared at him. It was as if Mr. Frost had been a coat or hat the man had been wearing, that he had now discarded. The affable exterior has gone. The light glinted onto the man's spectacles and on the blade of knife. A voice called up to them from the further down the stairs. Scarlett. Mr. Frost, there's someone knocking at the front door. Shall I get it? The man Jack only glanced away for a moment, but Bob knew that the moment was all he had, and he faded as completely, as utterly as he could. The man Jack looked back to where Bob has been, then stared around the room, puzzled and rage competing on his face. He took a step further into the room, his head swinging from side to side, like an old tiger scenting prey. "You're here somewhere," growled the man Jack. "I can smell you." Behind him, the little door to the attic room slammed closed. As he swung around, he heard the key turn in the lock. The man Jack raised his voice. "It buys you moments, but it won't stop me, boy." He called through the locked door and simply, "We have unfinished business, you and I." Bob threw himself down the stairs, bouncing into the walls, almost stumbling headlong in his rush to reach Scarlett. "Scarlett," he said when he saw her. "It's him. Come on." "Who? What are you talking about?" "Him. Ross. He's Jack. He tried to kill me." A bang from above as man Jack kicked at the door, but Scarlett tried to make sense of what she was hearing. "But he's nice." "No," said Bob, grabbing her hand and pulling her down the stairs into the hallway. "No, he's not." Scarlett opened the front door. "Good evening, young lady," said the man at the door, looking at her. "We're looking for Mr. Frost. I believe this is his neck of the woods." He had a silver and white hair and the smell of cologne. "Are you friends of his?" he asked. "Oh yes," said the smaller man, just standing behind. He had a black mustache and was the only one of the men to wear a hat. "Certainly are," said the third, a younger man, huge and Nordic blonde. "Every man Jack of us," he said the last of the men, white and bull-like with a massive head. His skin was brown. Mr. Frost, he had to go out," he said. "But his car's here," said the white-haired man, as the blonde one said. "Who are you anyways?" "He's a close friend of my mom's," said Scarlett. She could see Bob now, on the other side of the group of men, gesturing frantically to her to leave the man and follow him. He said as quickly as she could. She just popped out for a newspaper from the corner, chopped down there, and she closed the door behind her, stepping around the man, and began to walk away. "Where are you going?" asked the man with the mustache. "I've got a bus to catch," she said. Scarlett walked up the hill towards the bus stop and the graveyard, and did not look back. Bob walked up beside her. Even to Scarlett, he seemed shadowy in the deepened dusk, like something was almost not there. In the shimmer of the heat haze, a scattered leaf that for a moment had seemed to be a boy. "Walk faster," said Bob. "They're all looking for you, but don't run." "Who were they?" asked Scarlett quietly. "I don't know," said Bob. "They all felt weird, like they weren't properly people. I want to go back and listen to them." "Of course they're people," said Scarlett, as she walked up the hill as fast as she could without actually running, no longer certain that Bob was by her side. The four men stood at the door of number 33. "I don't like this," said the big man with the brunette. "You don't like this, Mr. Tarr?" said the white-haired man. "None of us like it. All wrong. Everything's going wrong." "Franco is gone," they are answering, "and after Melbourne and Vancouver," said the man with the mustache. "For all we know, we four are all that's left." "Quiet, please, Mr. Ketch," said the white-haired man. "I'm thinking." "Sorry, sir," said Mr. Ketch, as he patted his mustache with one gloved finger, looking up at the hill and down again, and whistled through his teeth. "I think we should go after her," said the brunette man, Mr. Tarr. "I think you people should listen to me," said the white-haired man. "I said quiet, and what I meant was quiet." "Sorry, Mr. Dandy," the blonde man. They were quiet. In the silence, they could hear thumping noises coming from high inside the house. "I'm going in," said Mr. Dandy. Mr. Tar, you're with me. Kimber and Ketch, get that girl, bring her back. Dead or alive? Said Mr. Kitch with a smile. Alive, you moron, asked Mr. Dandy. I want to know what she knows. Maybe she's one of them, said Mr. Tar. One of those who had done us for in Vancouver and Melbourne. And get her, said Mr. Dandy. Get her now. The blonde man and the hat, the moustache, hurry up to the hill. Mr. Dandy and Mr. Tar stood outside the door to number 33. Force it, said Mr. Dandy. Mr. Tar put his shoulder against the door and began to lean his weight on it. It's reinforced, he said. Protected. Mr. Dandy said, nothing one Jack can do that another can fix. He pulled off his glove and put his hand inside the door, muttering something in a language older than English. Now try it, he said. Tar leaned against the door, grunting and pushing. This time the lock gave and the door swung open. Nicely done, said Mr. Dandy. There was a crashing noise from far above them, up at the top of the house. The man Jack met them halfway down the stairs. Mr. Dandy grinned at him, without any humor, but with perfect teeth. Hello, Jack Frost, he said. I thought you had the boy. I did, said the man Jack. He got away.
Okay. Again, Jack Dandy's smile grew wider and chillier and even more perfect. Once is a mistake, Jack. Twice is a disaster. We'll get him, said the man Jack. This ends tonight. It had better, said Mr. Dandy. He'll be in the graveyard, said the man Jack. The three men hurried down the stairs. The man Jack sniffed the air. He had the scent of the boy in his nostrils, a prickle at the nape of his neck. He felt like all this had happened years before. He paused, pulled on his long black coat, which had hung in the front hall, incongruous beside Mr. Frost's tweed jacket and fawn mackintosh. The front door was open to the street, and the daylight had almost gone. This time the man Jack knew exactly which way to go. He did not pause, but simply walked out of the house and hurried up the hill towards the graveyard. The graveyard gates were closed when Scarlet reached them. Scarlet pulled at them desperately, but the gates were padlocked for the night. And then Bart was beside her. Do you know where the key is? She asked. We don't have time, said Bart. He pushed close to the metal bars. Put your arms around me. You what? Just put your arms around me and close your eyes. Scarlet stared at Bart as if daring him to try something, and then she held him tightly and screwed her eyes shut. Okay. Bart leaned against the bars of the graveyard gates. They counted as part of the graveyard, and he hoped that his freedom of the graveyard might just this time cover other people too. And then, like smoke, Bart slipped through the bars. You can open your eyes, he said. She did? How did you do that? This is my home, he said. I can do things here. The sound of shoes slapping against the pavement, and two men were on the other side of the gates, rattling them, pulling at them. Hullo, said Jack Ketch, with a twitch of his moustache, and he smiled at Scarlet through the bars like a rabbit with a secret. He had a black silk cord tied around his left forearm, and now he was tugging at it with his gloved right hand. He pulled it off his arm and into his hand, testing it, running it from hand to hand as if he were about to make a cat's cradle. Come on out, girlie. It's all right. No one's gonna hurt you. We just need you to answer some questions, said the big blonde man, Mr. Nimble. We are on official business, he lied. There was nothing official about the Jacks of all trades, although there had been Jacks in governments and in police force and in other places besides. Run, said Bart to Scarlet, pulling at her hand. She ran. Did you see that? Said the Jack they called Ketch. What? I saw somebody with her, a boy. The boy asked the Jack called Nimble. Okay. How would I know? Here, give me a hand up. The bigger man put his hands out, linked them to make a step, and Jack Ketch's black cat foot went into it. Lifted up, he scrambled onto the top of the gates and jumped down to the drive, landing on all fours like a frog. He stood up, said, "Find another way in. I'm going after them." And he sprinted off the winding path that led into the graveyard. Scarlet said, "Just tell me what we're doing." Bot was walking fast through the Twill graveyard, but he was not running, not yet. "How do you mean?" "I think that man wanted to kill me. Do you see how he's playing with that black cord?" "I'm sure he does. That man Jack, you're Mr. Frost, he was going to kill me. He's got a knife." "He's not my Mr. Frost." "Well, I suppose he is. Sort of." "Sorry, where are we going?" "First, we put you somewhere safe, then I deal with them." All around Bot, the inhabitants of the graveyard were walking and gathering, worried and alarmed. "Bot," said Caius Pompeius, "what is happening?" "Bad people," said Bot. "Can our Lord keep an eye on them? Let me know when they are at all times. We have to hide Scarlet. Any ideas?" "The chapel crypt," said Thackeray Porringer. "First place they'll look," said Bot. "Who are you talking to?" asked Scarlet, staring at Bot. As if he had gone mad. Cassius Pompeius said, "Inside the hill." Bot thought, "Yes, good call." "Scarlet, do you remember the place where you found the Indigo Man?" "Kind of. A dark place. I remember there wasn't anything to be scared of." "I'm taking you up there." They hurried up the path. Scarlet could tell that Bot was talking to people as he went, but could only hear his side of the conversation. It was like hearing someone talk on the phone, which reminded her. "My mom's going to go to Spare," she said. "I'm dead." "No," said Bot, "you're not. Not yet. Not for a long time." Then, to someone else, two of them, now together. "Okay." They reached the Frobisher Mausoleum. The entrance is behind the bottom coffin on the left. Bot said, "If you hear anyone coming and it's not me, go straight down to the very bottom. Do you have anything to make light?" "Yeah, a little LED thing on my keyring." "Good." He pulled open the door to the mausoleum and, "Be careful, don't trip on anything or anything." "Where are you going?" asked Scarlet. This is my home, said Bot. "I'm going to protect it." Scarlet squeezed the LED keyring and went down on her hands and knees. The space behind the coffin was tight, but she went through the hole into the hill and pulled the coffin back as best she could. In the dim LED light, she could see stone steps. She stood upright, and hand on the wall, walked down the 3 steps, then stopped and sat, hoping that Bot knew what he was doing, and she waited. Bot said, "Where are they now?" His father said, "One fellow's up by the Egyptian walk, looking for you. His friend's waiting down by the alley wall. 3 others are on their way over, climbing up the alley wall on all their big bins. I wish Silas were here. He will make short work for them, or Miss Lupescu." "You don't need them," said Mr. Owens encouragingly. "Where's Mom?" "Down by the alley wall. Tell her I've hidden Scarlet in the back of the Frobisher's place. I ask her to keep an eye on her if anything happens to me." Bot ran through the darkened graveyard. The only way into the northwest part of the graveyard was through the Egyptian wall, and to get there he would have to go past the little man with the black silk robe, a man who was looking for him and who wanted him dead. He was nobody Owens, he told himself. He was part of the graveyard. He would be fine. He nearly missed the little man, the Jack called Catch, as he hurried into the Egyptian wall. The man was almost part of the shadows. Bot breathed in, faded as deeply as he could, and moved past the man like dust blown on an evening breeze. He walked down the green hung length of the Egyptian walk, and then with an effort of will he became as obvious as he could and kicked at a pebble. He saw the shadow by the ark detach itself and come after him, almost as silent as the dead. Bot pushed through the trailing ivy that blocked the end of the walk and into the northwest corner of the graveyard. He would have to time this just right, he knew. Too fast and the man would lose him, yet if he moved too slowly a black silk rope would wrap itself around his neck, taking his breath with it and all his tomorrows. He pushed noisily through the tangle of ivy, disturbing one of the graveyard's many foxes, which sprinted off into the undergrowth. It was a jungle here, of fallen headstones and headless statues, of trees and holy bushes, of slippery piles of half-rotted fallen leaves, but it was a jungle that Bot had explored since he had been old enough to walk and to wander. Now he was hurrying carefully, stepping from root tangle of ivy to stone to earth, confident that this was his graveyard. He could feel the graveyard itself trying to hide him, to protect him, to make him vanish, and he fought it, worked to be seen. He saw Nehemiah trot and hesitated. "Hola, young boy," called the poet. "I hear the excitement is the master of the hour, that you fling yourself through these dominions like a comet across the firmament. What's the word, good bot?" "Stand there," said Bot, "just where you are. Look back the way I came. Tell me when he comes close." Bot skirted the ivy-covered Kerstay's grave, and then he stood panting as if out of breath, with his back to his pursuer, and then he waited. It was only for a few seconds, but it was like a small forever. "He's here, lad," said Nehemiah Trot. "About 20 paces behind you." The jack called Ketch saw the body in front of him. He pulled his black silk cord tight between his hands. It had been stretched around many necks over the years, and had been the end of every one of the people it had embraced. It was very soft and very strong and invisible to X-rays. Ketch's mustache moved, but nothing else. He had his prey in his sight and did not want to startle it. He began to advance silent as a shadow. The boy straightened up. Jack Ketch darted forward, his polished black shoes almost soundless on the leaf mold. "Here comes, lad," called Nehemiah Trot. The boy turned around and Jack Ketch made a leap towards him, and Mr. Ketch felt the world tumbling away beneath him. He grabbed at the wall with one gloved hand, but tumbled down and down into the old grave, all of 20 feet, before crash landing on Mr. Kerstay's coffin, splintering the coffin lid and his ankle at the same time. "That's one," said Bot, calmly, although he felt anything but calm. "Elegantly accomplished," said Nehemiah Trot. "I shall compose an ode. Would you like to stay and listen?" No time," said Bot. "Where are the other men?" Euphemia Horsefall said, "3 of them are on the southwestern path heading up the hill." Tom Sands said, "And there's another. Right now he's just walking around the chapel. He's the one who's been all around the graveyard for the last month. But there's something different about him." Bot said, "Keep an eye on the man in with Mr. Kerstay, and please apologize to Mr. Kerstay for me." He ducked under a pine branch and loped around the hill on the paths when it suited him, off the paths, jumping from monument to stone when that was quicker. He passed the old apple tree. "There's 4 of them, still," said a tart female voice. "4 of them and all killers, and the rest of them won't all fall into open graves and to oblige you." "Hullo, Lisa, I thought you were angry at me." "I might be, and I mightn't." "Yeah," she said, nothing more than a voice. "But I'm not gonna let them cut you up, no how." "Then trip them for me. Trip them and confuse them and slow them down. Can you do that?" "While you runs away again?" "Nobody, Owens. Why don't you just fade and hide in your mam's nice tomb where they'll never find you, and soon enough Silas will be back to take care of them." "Maybe he will and maybe he won't," said Bot. "I'll meet you by the lightning tree." "I'm still not talking to you," said Lisa Hemstock's voice, proud as a peacock and pert as a sparrow. "Actually you are. I mean, we're talking right now. Only during this emergency. After that, not a word." Bot made for the lightning tree, an oak that had been burned by lightning 20 years ago and now was nothing more than a blackened limb clutching at the sky. He had an idea. It was not fully formed. It depended on whether he could remember Miss Lopescu's lessons, remember everything he had seen and heard as a child. It was harder to find the grave than he had expected, even looking for it, but he found an ugly grave tipped at an odd angle, its stone topped by a headless water-stained angel that had the appearance of a gargantuan fungus. It was only when he touched it and felt the chill that he knew it for certain. He sat down on the grave, forced himself to become entirely visible. "You've not faded," said Lisa's voice. Anyone could find you. Good, said Bot. I want them to find me. More know Jack Fool and then Jack Fool knows, said Lisa. The moon was rising. It was huge now and low in the sky. Bot wondered if it would be overdoing it if he began to whistle. I can see him. A man ran towards him, tripping and stumbling, 2 other men close behind. Bot was aware of the dead clustered around them, watching the scene, but he forced himself to ignore them. He made himself more comfortable on the ugly grave. He felt like the bait in a trap, and it was not a good feeling. The bull-like man was the first to reach the grave, followed closely by the man with the white hair who had done all the talking and the tall blonde man. Bot stayed where he was. The man with the white hair said, "Ah, the elusive Dorian boy, I presume. Astonishing. There's our Jack Frost hunting the whole world over, and here you are, just where he left you, 13 years ago." Bot said, "That man killed my family." "Indeed he did." "Why? Does it matter? You're never going to tell anyone." Then it's no skin off your nose to tell me, is it?" The white hat man barked a laugh. "Ha, funny boy. What I want to know is, how have you lived in the graveyard for 13 years without anyone catching wise?" "I'll answer your question if you answer mine." The bull-necked man said, "You don't talk to Mr. Dandy like that, you little snot. I'll split you. I will." The white-haired man took another step closer to the grave. "Hush, Jack Tar, all right. An answer for an answer. We, my friends and I, are members of a fraternal organization known as the Jack of all trades, or the Knaves, or by other names. We go back an extremely long way. We remember things that most people have forgotten. The old knowledge." Bot said, "Magic. You know a little magic." Ciao.
The man nodded agreeably. "If you want to call it that, but it's a very specific sort of magic. There's a magic you take from death. Something leaves the world. Something else comes into it. You killed my family for? For what? For magic powers? That's ridiculous. No. We killed you for protection. Long time ago, one of our people, this was in Egypt, in pyramid days, he foresaw that one day there would be a child born who would walk the borderland between the living and the dead. That if this child grew to adulthood, it would mean the end of our order. All we stand for. We had people casting natives before London was a village. We had your family in our sights before New Amsterdam became New York. And we sang what we thought was the best and the sharpest and the most dangerous of all, the Jacks, to deal and make it work for us instead, and keep everything tickly-boo for another 5,000 years. Only he didn't. Bot looked at the tree man. "So where is he? Why isn't he here?" The blonde man said, "We can't take care of you. He's got a good nose on him. Has our Jack Frost. He's on the trail of your little girlfriend. Can't leave any witness. Not to something like this." Bot leaned forward, dug his hand in the wild weed grass that grew on the unkept grave. "Come and get me," was all that he said. The blond man grinned. The bull-necked man lunged. And yes, even Mr. Dandy took several steps forward. Bob pushed his fingers as deep as he could into the grass and then he put his lips back from his teeth, and he said 3 words in a language that was already ancient before the Indigo Man was born. Skat, skat, kavaga. He opened the gold gate. The grave swung up like a trapdoor. In the deep hole below the door, Bob could see stars and a darkness filled with glimmering lights. The bullman, Mr. Tar, at the edge of the hole, could not stop and stumbled surprised into the darkness. Mr. Nibble jumped towards Bob, his arms extended, limping over the hall. Bob watched as the man stopped in the air at the zay of his spring and hung there for a moment before he was sucked through the gold gate, down and down. Mr. Dandy stood at the edge of the gold gate on a lip of stone and looked in the darkness beneath him. Then he raised his eyes to Bob, and thin-lipped he smiled. "I don't know what you just did," said Mr. Dandy, "but it didn't work." He put his gloved hand out of his pocket, holding a gun pointed directly at Bob. "I should have just done this 13 years ago," said Mr. Dandy. "You can't trust other people. If it's important, you have to do it yourself." A desert wind came out from the open gold gate, hot and dry, with green in it. Bob said, "There's a desert down there. If you look for water, you should find some. There's things you can to eat if you look hard, but don't antagonize the night ghost. Avoid Gloomhaven. The ghost might wipe your memory and make you into one of them, or they might wait until you've rotten down and then eat you. Either way, you can do better." The gun barrel did not waver. Mr. Dandy, "Why are you?" Mr. Dandy said, "Why are you telling me this?" Bob pointed across the graveyard. "Because of them," he said. And as he said it, as Mr. Dandy glazed away only for a few moments, Bob faded. Mr. Dandy's eye flickered away and back, but Bob was no longer by the broken statue. From deep in the hole, something called. like the lonely wail of a night bird. Mr. Dandy looked around, his forehead a slash, his body a mess of indecision and rage. "Where are you?" he crowed. "The deuce take you! Where are you?" He thought he had heard a voice say, "Gold gates are made to be opened and then closed again. You can't leave them open. They want to close." The lip of the hole strutted and shook. Mr. Dandy had been in an earthquake once, years before, in Bangladesh. It felt like that the earth juddered, and Mr. Dandy felt would have fallen into the darkness. But he caught hold of the fallen headstone and threw his arm about it, locked on. He did not know what was beneath him, only that he had no wish to find out. The earth shook, and he felt the headstone begin to shift beneath his weight. He looked up. The boy was there, looking down at him curiously. "I'm going to let the gates close now," he said. "I think if you keep holding on to that thing, it might close on you and crush you, or it might just absorb you and make you into part of the gate. Don't know, but I'm giving you a chance, more than you ever gave my family." A ragged jodder, Mr. Dandy looked up into the boy's grey eyes and swore. Then he said, "You can't ever escape us. We're the jack of all trades. We're everywhere. It's not over." It is for you," said Bot. "The end of your people and all you stand for, like your man in Egypt predicted. You didn't kill me. You were everywhere. Now it's all over." Then Bot smiled. "That's what Silas is doing, isn't it?" "That's where he is." Mr. Dandy's face confirmed everything that Bot had suspected, and what Mr. Dandy might have said that Bot would never know, because the man let go of the headstone and tumbled slowly down into the open gold gate. Bot said, "Wake Carados." The gold gate was a grave once again, nothing more. Something was tugging at his sleeve. 14 brass Bartleby looked up at him. "Bot, the man by the chapel. He's going up the hill." The man, Jack, followed his nose. He had left the others, not least because the stink of Jack Dandy's collagen made finding anything subtler impossible. He could not find the boys, but said, "Not here." The boys smelled like the graveyard, but the girl smelled like her mother's house, like the depth of perfume she had touched to her neck before school that morning. She smelled like a victim too, like fierce sweat, thought Jack, like his quarry, and wherever he was, the boy would be too. Sooner or later, his hand closed around the handle of his knife, and he walked up the hill. He was almost at the top of the hill when it occurred to him, a hunch he knew was the truth, that Jack Dandy and the rest of them were gone. Good, he thought. There's always room at the top. The man Jack's own rise through the organization had slowed and stopped after he failed to kill all of the Dorian family. It was as if he had no longer been trusted. Now soon everything would change. At the top of the hill, the man Jack lost the girl's scent. He knew she was near. He retraced his step, almost casually caught her perfume again about 50 feet away, beside a small mausoleum with a closed metal gate. He put on the gate and swung wide. Her scent was strong now. He could smell that she was afraid. He put down the coffins one by one from their shelves and let them clatter onto the ground, shattering the old wood, spilling their contents on the mausoleum floor. No, she was not hiding in any of those. Then where? He examined the wall, solid. He went down on his hands and knees, put the last coffin out, and reached back. His hand found an opening. Scarlet, he caught, trying to remember how he would have caught her name when he was Mr. Frost. But he could not even find that part of himself any longer. He was the man Jack now, and that was all he was. On his hands and his knees, he crawled through the hole into the wall. He crawled through the hole in the wall. When Scarlet heard the crashing noise from above, she made her way carefully down the steps, her left hand touching the wall, her right hand holding the little LED key ring, which cast just enough light to allow her to see where she was placing her feet. She made it to the bottom of the stone steps and edged back in the open chamber, and her heart thumping. She was scared of nice Mr. Frost and his scarier friends, scared of his room, this room, and its memories. Even if she were honest, a little afraid of Bob. He was no longer a quiet boy with a mystery, a link to her childhood. He was something different, something not quite human. She thought, I wonder what Mom's thinking right now. She'll be phoning Mr. Frost's house over and over to find out when I'm going to get back. She thought if I get out of this alive, I'm going to force her to get me a phone. It's ridiculous. I'm the only person in my year who doesn't have her own phone, practically. She thought I missed my mom. She had not thought anyone human could move that silently through the dark, but a gloved hand closed upon her mouth, and a voice that was only barely recognizable as Mr. Frost said, without emotion. Do anything clever, do anything at all, and I will cut your throat. Not if you understand me. Scarlet nodded. Bob saw the chaos on the floor of the Frobisher Mausoleum, the fallen coffins with their contents scattered across over the altar. There were many Frobishers and Frobishers, and several petty furs, all in various states of upset and consternation. He is already down there, and said Ryan. Thank you, said Bot. He clambered through the hole into the inside of the hill, and he went down the stairs. Bot saw as the Dead Sea. He saw the steps, and he saw the chamber at the bottom. And when he got halfway down the steps, he saw the man Jack holding Scarlet. He had her arm twisted up behind her back, and a large wicked boning knife at her neck. The man Jack looked up in the darkness. "Hello, boy," he said. Bot said nothing. He concentrated on his fate. Took another step. "You think I can see you?" said the man Jack. "And you're right, I can't. Not really, but I can smell your fear, and I can hear you move, and hear you breathe. And now that I know your clever vanishing trick, I can feel you. Say something now. Say it so I can hear it, or I start to cut little pieces out of the young lady. Do you understand me?" "Yes," said Bot, his voice echoing into the chamber room. "I understand." "Good," said Jack. "Now, come here. Let's have a little chat." Bot began to walk down the steps. He concentrated on the fear, on raising the level of panic in the room, of making the terror something untangible. "Stop that," said the man Jack. "Whatever it is you're doing, don't do it." Let it go." "You think," said Jack, "that you can do your little magics on me? Do you know what I am, boy?" Bot said, "You're Jack. You killed my family, and you should have killed me." Jack raised an eyebrow. He said, "I should have killed you?" "Oh yes," the old man said, "that if you let me grow to adulthood, your order would be destroyed. I did. You failed. And you lost. My order goes back before Babylon. Nothing can harm it. They didn't tell you, did they? Bot was standing 5 paces from the man Jack. Those 4, they were the last of Jacks. What was it? Crow and Van Culver and Medlo Borene, all gone. Scarlet said, "Please, Bot, make him let go of me." "Don't worry," said Bot with a calm he did not feel. He said to Jack, "There's no point in hurting her. There's no point in killing me. Don't you understand? There isn't even an order of Jacks and of all traits, not anymore." Jack nodded thoughtfully. If this is true," said Jack, "and if I am now a Jack all alone, then I have an excellent reason for killing you both." Bot said nothing. "Pride," said the man Jack. "Pride in my work. Pride in finishing what I began." And then he said, "What are you doing?" Bot's hair crinkled. He could feel a smoke tendril presence twining through the room. He said, "It's not me. It's the Slayer. It guards the treasure that's buried here. Don't lie." Scarlet said, "He's not lying. It's true." Jack said, "True? Buried treasure? Don't make me." "The Slayer guards the treasure for the master." "Who said that?" asked the man Jack, looking around. "You heard it?" asked Bot, puzzled. "I heard it," said Jack. "Yes," Scarlet said. "I didn't hear anything." The man Jack said, "What is this place, boy? Where are we?" Before Bob could speak, the Slayer's voice spoke, echoing through the chamber. "This is the place of treasure. This is the place of power. This is where the Slayer guards and waits for our master to return." Bot said, "Jack." The man Jack tilted his head on one side. He said, "It's good to hear my name in your mouth, boy. If you'd used it before, I could have found you sooner." "Jack, what was my real name? What did my family call me? Why should that matter to you now?" Bot said, "The Slayer told me to find my name." "What was it?" Jack said, "Let me see. Was it Peter or Paul or Roderick?" "You look like a Roderick. Maybe you were." Stefan." He was playing with the boy. "You might as well tell me you're going to kill me anyways," said Bot. Jack shrugged and nodded in the darkness, as if to say obviously, "I want you to let the girl go," said Bot. "Let Scarlet go." Jack peered into the darkness, then said, "That's an Arthur stone, isn't it?" "I suppose so. And a knife, and a cup, and a brooch." He was smiling now in the darkness. Bob could see it on his face, a strange, delighted smile that seemed out of place on that face, a smile of discovery and of understanding. Scarlet couldn't see anything but a blackness that sometimes erupted in flashes inside her eyeballs. But she could hear the delight in Jack's voice. "The man," Jack said, "so the brotherhood is over, and the convocation is at an end. And yet, if there are no more Jacks, of all traits but me, what does it matter? There can be a new brotherhood more powerful than the last." "Power," echoed the slayer. "This is perfect," said the man Jack. "Look at us. We are in a place for which my people have hunted for thousands of years, with everything necessary for the ceremony waiting for us. It makes you believe in providence, doesn't it? Or in the mass prayers of all the Jacks who have gone before us, that our lowest ebb we are given this." Bot could feel the slayer listening to Jack's words, but could feel a low sources of excitement building in the chamber. The man Jack said, I am going to put out my hand." "Boy Scarlet, my knife is still at your throat. Do not try to run. When I let go of you, boy, you will place the cup and the knife and the brooch in my hand. The treasure of the sealer whispered. The triple voice, it always comes back. We guard it for the master." Bot bent down, took the object from the altar stone, put them in Jack's open, gloved hand. Jack grinned. "Scarlet, I am going to release you. When I take the knife away, I want you to lie face down on the ground, with your hands behind your head. Move or try anything, and I will kill you painfully. Do you understand?" She gulped. Her mouth was dry, but she took one shaky step forward. Her right arm, which had been twisted up to the small of her back, was now numb, and she felt only pins and needles in her shoulder. She lay down, her cheek resting on the packed earth. "We are dead," she thought, and it was not even tinged with emotion. It felt as if she were watching something happening to other people. A surreal drama that had turned into a game of murder in the dark. She heard the noise of Jack taking hold of Bot. Bot's voice said, "Let her go." The man Jack's voice, "If you do everything I say, I won't kill her. I won't even hurt her. I don't believe you. She can identify you. No. The adult voice seemed certain. She can't. And then it said, 10,000 years, and the knife is still sharp. The admiration in the voice was palpable. Boy, go and kneel on that altar stone. Hands behind your back. Now!
It has been so long, said the Slayer, but all Scarlet heard was a slithering noise as if of enormous coils winding around the chamber. But the man Jack heard. You want to know your name, boy, before I spill your blood on the stone? Bart felt the cold of the knife at his neck, and in that moment Bart understood. Everything slowed. Everything came into focus. I know my name, he said. I'm Nobody Owens. That's who I am. And kneeling on the cold altar stone, it all seemed very simple. Slayer, he said to the chamber, do you still want a master? The Slayer guards the treasure until the master returns. Well, said Bart, haven't you finally found the master you've been looking for? He could sense the Slayer writhing and expanding, hear a noise like the scratching of 1,000 date twigs, as if something huge and muscular was snaking its way around the inside of the chamber. And then, for the first time, Bart saw the Slayer. Afterwards, he was never able to describe what he had seen. Something huge, yes, something with the body of an enormous snake, but with the head of a what? There were 3 of them. 3 heads, 3 necks. The faces were dead, as if someone had constructed dolls from parts of the corpses of humans and of animals. The faces were covered in purple patterns, tattooed in swirls of indigo, turning the dead faces into strange, expressive, monstrous things. The faces of the Slayer nuzzled the air about Jack tentatively, as if they wanted to stroke or caress him. What's happening? Said Jack. What is it? What does it do? It's called the Slayer. It guards the place. It needs a master to tell it what to do, said Bart. Jack lifted the flint knife in his hand. Beautiful, he said to himself. And then, of course, it's been waiting for me. And yes, obviously, I am its new master. The Slayer encircled the interior of the chamber. Master, it said, like a dog who had waited patiently for too long. It said master again, as if testing the word to see how it tasted, and it tasted good. So it said one more time, with a sigh of delight and of longing, master. Jack looked down at Bart. 13 years ago, I missed you, and now we are reunited. The end of one order, the beginning of another. Goodbye, boy. With one hand, he lowered the knife to the boy's throat. The other hand held the goblet. Bart, said Bart. Not boy, Bart. He raised his voice. Slayer, he said. What will you do with your new master? The Slayer sighed. We will protect him until the end of time. The Slayer will hold him in its coils forever and never let him endure the dangers of the world. Then protect him, said Bart. Now, I am your master. You will obey me, said the man Jack. The Slayer has waited so long, said the triple voice of the Slayer, triumphantly, so long a time. It began to loop its huge lazy coils around the man Jack. The man Jack dropped the goblet. Now he had a knife in each hand, a flint knife and a knife with a black bone handle, and he said, Get back! Keep away from me! Don't get any closer! He slashed out with the knife as the Slayer twined about him, and in a huge crushing movement engulfed the man Jack in its coils. Bart ran over to Scarlet and helped her up. I want to see, she said. I want to see what's happening. She pulled out her LED light and turned it on. What Scarlet saw was not what Bart saw. She did not see the Slayer, and that was a mercy. She saw the man Jack, though. She saw the fear on his face, which made him look like Mr. Frost had once looked. In his terror, he was once again the nightman who had driven her home. He was floating in the air 5, then 10 feet above the ground, slashing wildly at the air with 2 knives, trying to stab something she could not see, in a display that was obviously having no effect. Mr. Frost, the man Jack, whoever he was pulled away from them, forced back until he was spread-eagled, arms and legs white and flailing against the side of the chamber wall. It seemed to Scarlet that Mr. Frost was being pulled through the wall, pulled into the rock, was being swallowed up by it. Now there was nothing visible but a face. He was shouting wildly, desperately, shouting at Bot to call the thing off. To save him. Please, please. And then the man's face was pulled through the wall, and the voice was silenced. Bot walked back to the altar stone. He picked up the stone knife and the goblet and the brooch from the ground, and he placed them where they belonged. He left the black metal knife where it fell. Scarlet said, "I thought you said the Slayer couldn't hurt people. I thought all it could do was frighten us." "Yes," said Bot, "but it wanted the master to protect. It told me so." Scarlet said, "You mean you knew? You knew that would happen?" "Yes, I hoped it would." He helped her up the steps and out into the chaos of the Frobisher mausoleum. "I'll need to clean this all up," said Bot casually. Scarlet tried not to look at the things on the floor. "They stepped out into the graveyard," Scarlet said. Dully, once more, "You knew that would happen." This time Bot said nothing. She looked at him as if unsure of what she was looking at. "So you knew that the Slayer would take him? Was that why you hid me down there? Was it? What was I, then? Bait?" Bot said, "It wasn't like that." Then he said, "We're still alive, aren't we? And he won't trouble us any longer." Scarlet could feel the anger and the rage welling up inside her. The fear had gone, and now all she was left with was the need to lash out, to shout. She fought the urge. "And what about those other men? Did you kill them too?" "I didn't kill anyone." "Then where are they?" "One of them's at the bottom of a deep grave with a broken ankle. The other 3 are, well, they're a long way away." "You didn't kill them?" "Of course not," Bot said. "This is my home. Why would I want them hanging around here for the rest of time?" "Then, look, it's okay. I dealt with them." Scarlet took a step away from him. She said, You aren't a person. People don't behave like you. You're as bad as he was. You're a monster." Bot felt the blood drain from his face. After everything he had been through that night, after everything that had happened, this was somehow the hardest thing to take. "No," he said, "it wasn't like that." Scarlet began to back away from Bot. She took 1 step, 2 steps, and was about to flee, to turn and run madly, desperately away through the moonlit graveyard, when a tall man in black velvet put a hand on her arm and said, "I'm afraid you do Bot an injustice. But you will undoubtedly be happier if you remember none of this. So let us walk together, you and I, and discuss what has happened to you over the last few days, and what it might be wise for you to remember, and what it might be better for you to forget." Bot said, "Silas, you can't make her forget me." "It will be safest that way," said Silas simply. "For her, if not for all of us." Don't I get a say in this?" asked Scarlet. Silas said nothing. Bot took a step towards Scarlet, said, "Look, it's over. I know it was hard, but we did it. You and me. We beat them." Her head was shaking gently as if she were denying everything she saw, everything she was experiencing. She looked up at Silas and said only, "I want to go home, please." Silas nodded. He walked with the girl down the path that would eventually lead them both out of the graveyard. Bot stared at Scarlet as she walked away, hoping that she would turn and look back. Then she would smile or just look at him without fear in her eyes. But Scarlet did not turn. She simply walked away. Bot went back into the mausoleum. He had to do something, so he began to pick up the fallen coffins, to remove the debris, and to replace the tangle of tumbled bones into the coffins, disappointed to discover that none of the many Frobishers and Pettifers gathered around to watch seemed to be quite certain whose bones belonged in which container. A man brought Scarlet home later. Scarlet's mother could not remember quite what he had told her, although disappointingly she had learned that that nice J. Frost had unavoidably been forced to leave town. The man talked with them in the kitchen about their lives and their dreams, and by the end of the conversation, Scarlett's mother had somehow decided that they would be returning to Glasgow. Scarlett would be happy to be near her father and to see her old friends again. Silas left the girl and her mother talking in the kitchen, discussing the challenges of moving back to Scotland. With Luna promising to buy Scarlett a phone of her own, they barely remembered that Silas had ever been there, which was the way he liked it. Silas returned to the graveyard and found Bot sitting in the amphitheatre by the obelisk, his face set. "How is she?" "I took a memory," said Silas. "They'll return to Glasgow. She has friends there." "How could you make her forget me?" Silas said, "People want to forget the impossible. It makes their world safer." Bot said, "I liked her." "I'm sorry." Bot tried to smile, but he could not find a smile inside himself. The man, they spoke about trouble they were having in Krakow and Melbourne and Vancouver. "That was you, wasn't it?" "I was not alone," said Silas. "Miss Lupescu," said Bot. Then, seeing the expression on his guardian's face, "Is she all right?" Silas shook his head, and for a moment his face was terrible for Bot to behold. "She fought bravely. She fought for you, Bot." Bot said, "The slayer has the man, Jack. 3 of the others went through the gold gate. There's one injured but still alive at the bottom of the Carstairs grave." Silas said, "He's the last of the Jacks. I will need to talk to him then, before sunrise." The wind that blew across the graveyard was cold, but neither the men nor the boy seemed to feel it. Bot said, "She was scared of me." "Yes, but why? I saved her life. I'm not a bad person, and I'm just like her. I'm alive too." Then he said, "How did Miss Lupescu fall?" "Bravely," said Silas, "in battle, protecting others." Bot's eyes were dark. "You could have brought her back here, buried her here. Then I could have talked to her." Silas said that was not an option. Bot felt his eyes stinging. He said, "She used to call me Nimani. No one will ever call me that again." Silas said, "Shall we go and get food for you?" "We? You want me to come with you? Out of the graveyard?" Silas said, "No one is trying to kill you. Not right now. There are a lot of things they are not going to be doing. Not any longer. So yes. What would you like to eat?" Bot thought about saying that he wasn't hungry, but that simply was not true. He felt a little sick and a little lightheaded, and he was starving. "Pizza?" he suggested. They walked through the graveyard, down to the gates. As Bot walked, he saw the inhabitants of the graveyard, but they let the boy and his guardian pass among them without a word. They only watched. Bot tried to thank them for their help, to call out his gratitude, but the dead said nothing. The lights of the pizza restaurants were brighter than Bot was comfortable with. He and Silas sat near the back, and Silas showed him how to use the menu. How to order food. Silas ordered a glass of water and a small salad for himself, which he pushed around the bowl with his fork but never actually put to his lips. Bot ate his pizza with his fingers in enthusiasm. He did not ask questions. Silas would talk in his own time, or he would not. Silas said, "We had known of them, of the Jacks, for a long, long time, but we knew of them only from the results of their activities. We suspected there was an organization behind it, but it hid too well. And then they came after you and they killed your family. And slowly I was able to follow their trail." "Is we you and Miss Lupescu?" asked Bot. "Us and others like us. The Honor Guard," said Bot. "How did you hear about?" said Silas. Then, "No matter, little peaches have big ears, as they say. Yes, the Honor Guard." Silas picked up his glass of water. He put the water glass to his lips, moistened them, then put it down on his polished black tabletop. The surface of the tabletop was almost mirrored, and had anyone cared to look, they might have observed that the tall man had no reflection. Bot said, "So, now you're done? Done with all this? Are you going to stay?" "I gave my word," said Silas. "I'm here until you are grown." "I'm grown," said Bot. "No," said Silas. "Almost. Not yet." He put a 10-pound note down on the tabletop. "That girl," said Bot, "Scarlett. Why was she so scared of me, Silas?" But Sawyer said nothing, and the question hung in the air as the man and the youth walked out of the bright pizza restaurant into the waiting darkness, and soon enough they were swallowed by the night.